This is the hardest hitting week of bye weeks in fantasy football. We have the Ravens, Bills, Vikings, Bears all on bye, so this is a crucial week to make sure we get the waivers right and pick up the right guys so we can secure a win this week and for the rest of the weeks coming up until the fantasy football playoffs. So lucky for you, you found the exact video you need to get all of those players to pick up off the waivers to give you a better chance at winning. And you guys know I don't want to waste any time, so I'm going to give you a quick list of the players that should already be rostered in your league, but I don't know how big your league is or what the league size is, but I want you to be the most informed group of people on YouTube. So make sure Josh Downs is already rostered in a league. If he's on your waivers, he should already be the first priority. I don't know how he's only rostered in 58% of leagues. He's had some bad weeks due to injury. People started dropping him, but then he comes back last week and has 13 targets leading the team. He might not have had the best fantasy point performance day, but volume is king. He gets a lot of it. This offense is pretty decent in the passing game. Gardner Minshew threw 40 passes. This offense is top 5 in pace of play. They're going to get a lot of opportunities. Josh Downs roster him already, but another guy that should already be rostered is Demario Douglas. He left last week's game with a concussion early, so he's probably going to miss one game, if that. Either way, he might even be dropped because of it. Make sure he is rostered. He is essentially the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots. Yes, they're dealing with quarterback trouble. Yes, their offense is not great, but he's still good enough to be a bench piece or a flex spot to fill in every once in a while. Make sure he's rostered. But the first real ad I'm going to talk about very quickly, because this should be a consensus number 1, is Pat Freiermuth. Use all of your waiver priority, all of your fab. Get him on your team. He came out last week with 11 targets and leading the team in receiving with 120 yards. And it's not like this was coming out of nowhere. He's been producing for pretty much the entirety of his career. In his rookie year, he finished as the tight end 13. And it's not very often we see rookie tight ends producing straight out of the jump. I mean, if we look at this year, it looks like it'll probably be common with Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid, but it's really not that often that rookie tight ends actually become fantasy viable. Pat Freiermuth did it before everybody else started. And then the year after that, which was last year, he finished as the tight end 8, and all of us consensusly thought that he was going to continue that moving into this year, but he was dealing with 10,000 types of injuries, and now he's finally healthy. He comes back and leads the team in receiving. Is he going to get 20 fantasy points a game or more? Probably not. But if you're a guy that likes superstition, you can see that Matt Canada just got fired and the Steelers won their game, and Pat Freiermuth had an insane game and they had a better passing offense in general. Maybe this is something we can expect, at least more passing volume and more targets going Pat Freiermuth's way. He's always been a top guy for Kenny Pickett. Is he a set it and forget it guy for the remainder of the season? No, not yet, but he's still way better than anybody else you're going to get on your waivers. This is the last week you're going to be able to get him. Make sure it's you. But if you are getting any kind of value from this video, make sure to double check that you are subscribed already. I know some of you guys aren't. You're popping in from, I guess, the homepage or wherever you're finding this video. Just make sure you're subscribed. It would mean the world to me, but it would give you guys all the fancy information you need. It's always good to get a second opinion. But the next guy we need to be picking up off the waivers, if you do need a wide receiver to fill in for all these bye weeks or injuries, is Elijah Moore. And there's a couple of reasons for this. He has been one of the more consistent wide receivers in this Browns offense despite all the quarterback trouble. He finished with 9 targets this week against one of the tougher defenses against fantasy wide receivers in Denver, and that tied his season high. But most importantly, we have an injury to Amari Cooper, which is going to make him so much more valuable of a wide receiver, especially off the waivers. Getting a guy that has this level of consistent target share and the great opportunity with injuries is not something you find very often. But Amari Cooper could be out a couple weeks. He could be out no weeks. We still don't know about how serious this injury is. His x-rays did come back negative for his rib injury, so he could come back this week. You never know. Either way, even if he is playing, Elijah Moore can still be a viable ad, and let me explain why. He's been pretty decent this year as far as targets go, and that's because of the role he plays in this offense. He runs more in the slot, which means more short routes, and he's more of a volume wide receiver compared to the guys like Amari Cooper or Rashid Shaheed that are really good wide receivers, but they take the top off defenses and are a lot more utilized in downfield plays. And when you have a guy playing like DTR or now PJ Walker instead of a guy like Deshaun Watson that can throw it downfield pretty well, you're going to get more value and more opportunities, which is exactly why we've been seeing David Njoku go crazy with these two quarterbacks. 15 targets 2 weeks ago and still another great target share last week. Volume is king in fantasy football, and that is exactly what he gets in his role in this offense. Is it great? Do they have a top 5 offense? Are they going to get a lot of touchdowns? No. But considering he's off the waivers and Amari Cooper could miss some time, which would make him the wide receiver 1, he is one of your top waiver wire ads for this week. But Curtis Samuel should be atop your list in waiver wire priority as well for this week. He hasn't been too appealing as of recently, I will admit. He's been dealing with injuries. He hasn't seen the most field time. But last week on Thanksgiving, he leads this team in receiving with 100 yards and 12 targets, again leading the team. Can we expect this level of production to happen every single week? No, we do have to be realistic, but we can also use the stats and just our eyes to realize that Curtis Samuel is one of Sam Howell's top targets when he is healthy this season. And that is something that's very, very valuable when this Commanders offense is one of the most pass heavy in the NFL. If we look at the stats, they have the number 1 most pass yards and the number 1 most passing attempts in the entirety of the NFL. The team might not be great, the defense is terrible, the offense can't win games, but there's a lot of offense and a lot of movement of the ball and a lot of time on field for them. But if you look deeper into it on why the Commanders are passing so much, most of it comes from their defense. in the fact that they can't stop anybody. When other teams are putting up 30 points every single week, you're gonna have to pass a lot to stay in these games. But again, this just means more opportunities for the offense and pass catchers, and we saw Curtis Samuel see a 27% team target share last week, and he ran 67% of the routes despite only being on the field for 55% of the plays. All this means is that he had great usage on the time he was on field, which wasn't a lot. As he gets more healthy, he's going to see more time on field, which means more opportunities. You guys get the idea. He's also a guy that we can plug and play for this week because he gets a great matchup against the Miami Dolphins, and this is going to be a really offensive centric game. But we should also be going through and picking up Josh Palmer if he's still on your waiver wire. A lot of people are worried about him and dropped him and kind of forgot about him because he's been on IR. But if he does end up coming back this year in time for the regular season or the fantasy playoffs, he could literally be a league winner. And the main reason for this isn't because he's some Justin Jefferson level talent, but it's really because there is no wide receiver 2 on this team. Nobody has stepped up behind Keenan Allen. And we can just look at last week. Keenan Allen had 14 receptions, Jalen Guyton had 1, Quentin Johnson had 1, Erickson had 1. Nobody else had any kind of usage. But lucky for us, Josh Palmer is that locked and loaded wide receiver 2 when he is healthy. He saw 7 targets in 4 of his healthy games this year. And it's really not hard to beat out any of these other wide receiver options. Quentin Johnson just cannot play football. He's dropping passes. None of these other wide receivers are really stepping up to be that clear number 2. Teams are starting to double team Keenan Allen. This offense is struggling because of it. They need Josh Palmer back. When he is back, he's going to produce. Stash him on your bench if you can. He's a great late season add. But if you are one of those people that does stream quarterbacks, you're a bit out of luck this week because there's so many bye weeks and there's a decent amount of injuries. It's hard to find a good quarterback on the waivers these days, but there is one that you can pick up if you are desperate, and his name is Jordan Love. He can be a plug and play guy this week as well as season long almost. He had a pretty good game last week on Thanksgiving against the Lions with 3 passing touchdowns and a decent amount of passing yards. We've seen his spike week upside possibilities. He's averaged 2 passing touchdowns since their bye week, and he's been really efficient on the ground with a little bit of rushing upside as well, but his passing is a lot better than I expected, and this Packers offense is a lot better than I expected as well. He does get a tougher matchup coming up this week against the Kansas City Chiefs defense, which has been putting it together as of recent, but after that he gets 2 cakewalk matchups against the Giants and the Buccaneers. Go pick him up if you do need him. He does always have that possibility of just being a complete bust, but as far as waiver wire quarterbacks go, he's a pretty decent option. He's got the offense. His team's getting healthier. Aaron Jones will probably play. Christian Watson's back. Gardner Minshew is also a decent option as well if you do need him. He had 40 passing attempts. He has a little bit of rushing upside. He's got some offensive weapons. But if you guys have any questions on who to add off the waivers or who to start sit, just make sure to comment it in this video while you're watching, and I'll answer them all as I get to them today, tomorrow, wherever it is. But this is the time when we need to be scavenging the waiver wire for our handcuff running backs. We are only 2 weeks out from the fantasy football playoffs. The waiver wires don't stop, but neither do injuries, and if one of our top running backs gets injured, we don't want to be screwed for the remainder of the playoffs. If you have a guy like Austin Eckler, CMC, Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, any of these top running backs, grabbing their handcuff could be super valuable and a safe play for you to ensure some fantasy wins in the playoffs if things were to go wrong. So here's a quick tier list of the handcuff running backs you can go ahead and pick up if you have one of their top RB1s. Elijah Mitchell for CMC is a great one. He gets usage already a little bit on the ground game. If Christian McCaffrey were to go out, it wouldn't really be a committee backfield. This offense is really, really good, so he's a great option to pick up. Samaje Perine is also an option. Javonte Williams had a little bit of an injury scare, but we've seen this year when Samaje is playing, he is a top running back. He has a lot of usage in the receiving game and some upside, even if this offense isn't the best, but they have been putting it together as of recent. He's a great add if you got Javonte now. Dearness Johnson is another interesting guy you can add for the backup of Travis Etienne. He has earned that RB2 spot in the depth chart. He's getting some work now. I'm sure he'll get involved in the receiving game. If Travis Etienne does go down, you need to pick him up. Again, Joshua Kelly for Austin Eckler. He's seen a little bit of work this year. And Mari DeMarcado is a guy that you can pick back up off the waivers if you do have James Conner. He got used a lot in the 2-minute drill last week. He gets some usage already. He's a great option. Pretty much any of the top running backs that aren't in a committee, you can pick up their backup. Tyler Algier, Rico Dowdle, Zach Moss, Kenneth Gainwell, any of those guys, as long as they're not in a committee and you got a top running back, it's a good idea to just make sure you're being safe. Grab them on your bench, stash them if you got an extra spot. But you guys know I love to end these videos off with some defenses we can stream off the waiver wire. In general, streaming defenses every single week throughout the year grades out better than just sticking with one defense for the entirety of the season. With that being said, go out and pick up the Jaguars defense if you don't have them on the waivers already. They're only rostered in 30% of leagues, which is actually very, very surprising to me. They do get a matchup against the Bengals, which is a dream. With Browning as their starting quarterback, this team has not looked the best. They still have all their stars, but they're not efficient. They can't move down the field, and with these inexperienced quarterbacks, sacks. There's a lot of opportunities for interceptions, turnovers, mistakes, and their offensive line isn't the best, so there's also that sack opportunity. But the Bengals itself aren't projected for that many points to score. I have this defense for the Jaguars projected for about 9 fantasy points on the week. It's going to be a great option if they are available. But if they get claimed before you have the chance to get them, you can also go through and get the Falcons defense. They're only rostered in 12% of leagues, but they get a dream matchup against the Tim Boyle-led Jets. I expect their defense to put about 8.5 fantasy points up this week. They put up 14 against the Saints last week, which is actually a bit of a better offense. And the Falcons defense in general, in real life, really is not that bad. They're a great option. But if any of those guys are taken, you can't get them. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers is another great option you can go ahead and pick up because of their matchup against the Panthers, which has proven to be one of the best teams to go against for fantasy defenses. They just had some coaching changes. The receivers can't catch the ball. Their offensive line is booty cheeks. Bryce Young can't pass for over 200 yards. Whose fault is that? I don't know. It doesn't matter for fantasy. This is a great defense because it's a terrible offense. A lot of opportunities for sacks, interceptions, all that good stuff. You guys know the vibe already. Despite the Bucs' bad secondary, they have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. So again, that could lead to more sacks. But that is going to finish off this video. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss these videos. And I'll see you guys in the next one coming tomorrow.